I'm going to collect my bowling ball. It is a real bowling ball.
Wow. Another warm round of applause for magician Andrew Bennett. Excellent work. Abracadabra. I'm going to nail emceeing the rest of this event. Yes. Creating it. Speaking it. Awesome. Okay. We have one of the great features that TEDx Towson has. I feel like I keep talking about how great TEDx Towson is. It's almost like it's great, like all of it is great. One of the great things we have is a student speaker. Every year we select a student that is going to speak and talk, a Towson student, and it's an opportunity for them to share their story. And we're very fortunate enough to have a student once again. She is a mental health blogger, and she's here to tell her story. Everyone, please give a round of applause. Jenna Kahn.
So I belong to this group on campus called Active Minds, and what we try to do is eradicate the stigma surrounding mental illness. There are many ways that we do this, but one key way is education. And education can take a lot of forms, but one form I like is statistics. So I'm going to open with my favorite. My favorite statistic is that 1 in 4 people will experience mental illness at some point in their life. That's 25%. There are tables, there's more than 4 of you. It's some, no, I'm sorry. But I come from a family of 4, and I'm the one. I know statistics don't work that way, but that's how it is in my family. I have my dad, my mom, and my brother, and me. And I'm the one with bipolar and OCD. Now, a statistic that I want to talk about today is 4 in 4, because I believe that 4 in 4 of us are actually affected by mental illness in some way, meaning that somehow it affects you because you are a mother, a father, a child, a sibling, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker. We all know someone with mental illness. You all qualify because you know me now, but I'm sure there's someone else that you know as well. So if 4 in 4 people are really affected, I want to know why we don't talk about it more. And so I'm going to try to start the conversation about mental health with all of you today. And I'm going to do that by telling my story, or the highlights reel. I started experiencing mental illness when I was 9 years old. I didn't know at the time that what I was experiencing was mania and depression, but that's what it was. I had the chance to read over some of my journals last weekend from when I was that young, and I talked about hyper attacks and this thing I called mad scientist. And mad scientist was a manic episode, and I didn't know it. Like I said, I didn't know at the time, but I would not be able to control my speech. I would have crazy thoughts racing, and I would have way too much energy. And then there would also be these depressed times when I couldn't get out of bed. I just felt hopeless. It's not normal for a 10-year-old to feel hopeless. And these episodes, what happened is as I got older, they became more frequent, they became more severe, and they lasted longer. It got to the point in 10th grade where I stopped going to school. I stayed in bed for days on end, and I turned to self-harm as a way to deal with what I was going through. It got to the point that my parents had to make the decision to move our family from Germany to the US. Now, you can't escape mental illness. Even though the change in scenery was nice, I still had bipolar disorder, although still, we didn't know what it was called. Things hit a really bad point my senior year of high school. I decided I was hallucinating. I was going back and forth between depression and mania at a very rapid pace. I decided that I needed to take my own life. So I planned it, and I got ready. And what happened was, as the days got closer, I knew I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. So I told my mom, and I told the school psychologist, and we made the decision for me to be hospitalized for 7 days. At the hospital, they formally diagnosed me with bipolar 1 rapid cycling and obsessive compulsive disorder. And that was really freeing for me to finally understand what was going on with my mind and my body. Now, when I got out of the hospital, I had a choice. I could tell everyone at school that I'd spent the last 7 days in Florida, or I could tell them that I really had been at the hospital for mental health issues. I didn't have the killer tan, so I had to go with the second option. So what I did is I decided that honesty would be the best policy for me. And something incredible happened. People really responded to what I told them. It turns out that a lot of people want to talk about mental health, and if you're willing to make that first step, they're willing to meet you halfway. Also, before that point, I'd had a fashion blog called the Awkward Indie Girl blog. It's called that because when I moved to the States, it was a weird nickname I picked up. But I decided to change my blog from a fashion blog to a mental health blog. And I decided that I would, instead of blogging about what I wore, I would blog about my symptoms, my diagnoses. I would blog about what I was going through and what I was hoping for the future. I have thousands of people that read my blog every day. And many, many people write to me. And they tell me that they're going through things that I'm going through. And maybe they haven't experienced everything that I'm experiencing. Maybe they haven't hallucinated, or maybe they haven't self-harmed. But there are parts of my story that they can relate to. And I hope that as I'm telling this to you, maybe there's a little section of my story that you can relate to. Maybe not the whole thing, but maybe there's a piece. Maybe you felt alone, or maybe you felt hopeless, or maybe you've been manic, or maybe you've been depressed, or maybe you have obsessions and compulsions and you're just trying to work it out. But basically what I'm telling you is that you do not need to start a blog to start the conversation. If you're willing to just, in casual conversation, mention that you're going through something or be willing to listen to someone else, that's incredibly valuable to our community. We need people like you. We need people who are willing to talk, people who are willing to listen. When you decide that you're going to tell your story, you give a face to mental illness. My hope is that now when you hear about bipolar disorder or OCD, you can think of me, and you can think of maybe some other people you know, instead of just these words and these diagnoses that you can't really connect to. So, tell your story, listen to other stories, and let's create a safe, supportive environment for mental health. Let's revolutionize the conversation.